Hello, good evening, good day. Welcome wherever you are in the world. Welcome to ADSN 82. My name is Curtis, I think, as far as it goes. It's usually Sunwarper doing all this, but there we go. This is the Independent Musician's Guide to Production and Promotion in Sunwarper's stead. We are joined this week by the one and only Host and Stripe. Ever so wonderful to join us. How are you doing, dude? How are you going?
Good, real good. Excited to talk MIDI and hardware setups. Yeah.
It's gonna be good, yeah. We if last week if we were in the box with Hydrofighter, this week we are stepping out of the box, looking at hardware, looking at MIDI, looking at ways in which we can take studio music production into the live situation and using live looping and MIDI to help us out. Joined as ever by the ever faithful Eon Lake. How are you doing, dude? How's your week?
I'm okay, mate. I'm okay. A little bit coming down with something at the moment, so if I sound a little bit rough, that'll be why. But yeah, otherwise, I'm happy to be here and talking. I like talking about this stuff.
It's always a good way. Have you had much time in the studio this week? What's been going down?
I have been doing little bits actually, but I'm also experimenting a little bit with video software for audio visual stuff so that I can be a real what's a polite word for it so I can get really pretentious.
Okay. Is that something within Ableton itself, or
external at the moment, although there is one that was recommended that I was looking at, but external at the moment.
Okay, I might have to pick your brain. We might have to do a thing about that because that sounds fascinating. That's cool. I've been looking at trying to do some of that, and it's one of those. It's like that's gear 4, and currently I'm in gear 2 and 3, so we'll get there. Essentially, that's what we want to see. Thank you ever so much for people joining us in the chat today. Shady is in the chat. He's doing well, which is a lovely thing. A lot going on with the label. I have seen Shady Ridge do nothing but put out gold consistently since the late summer, so it's exciting what's going on over in that corner of the world. It's always fun. But yes, as I previously said, ASF Stripe joins us this week. David, what's been going on? Have you had a good studio week? What's been going down at your end of the world?
Ooh, yeah, I've had a great studio week. I actually sent Sunwarper 6 tunes to master, so between raising a child, he's trying to work on that.
Put that baby down and do
my overly compressed and limited. And have fun with that. We all need distractions.
Yeah. We all need distractions, exactly. Yeah. It's lovely to see you, and you've got a couple of companions with you in the studio today, which is always nice. You just sent those masters across to Sunwarper, and they were working in Cubase. Is that fair?
Cubase Sys iPad.
Cubase Sys. Apologies, Cubase Sys. All right. And it's interesting because, like you say, when I approached you to have to come onto this show for this week, we started talking about hardware, and you started talking about where things are going with hardware. And traditionally, as we know, not that this is a whole for and against door thing, but the notion of you have traditionally been completely hardware. How's it been going across into the Cubase world?
Oh, it's been really, mixing is so much less stressful. Typically I'm using the I'll show it a little bit, the live track to mix, and it's really was old school, just listening, through the monitors and setting the levels. But I always still can't resist moving faders during the mix. So the problem, of course, was if it wasn't perfect and something was a little loud, you had to kind of mentally remember maybe what you did. Oh yeah, I went up a little bit on the fader here. So that's been great. And just being able to explore some different effects. There's some pretty affordable stuff like tone boosters for less than $10. The EQ, the reverb, especially if you're patient and get on something like Audio Bus forums and you wait for the sales. And these are really high quality effects. This is all you need, to be honest. to some degree. So it's been a joy, but all of that was based on this setup too. I did all, anywhere from, let's say, 4 to 6 tracks live. So I got the feel from the live jam, and then what was really nice now is to go back and maybe be able to correct the little things from a composition standpoint that typically I'd say, who's gonna notice that? It's fine. Now I was able to go in and say, no, that's going away. So yeah, so real good. Yeah, excited.
That's cool. It's good to say. Do you find what does Sunwarper call it? He calls it the process of diminishing returns, where, like you say, if you're playing live and you're playing that hardware, you're like, no one's going to notice that, to borrow your phrase. But then once you're in the DAW and you can see these things, you start tweaking. Do you find yourself overly tweaking? Do you find yourself coming back to it, or are you more zen than that?
I would say it's probably pretty much like the creative process in general. At first, it's kind of you're just it's so fun, exciting, and you just keep going and going and going, and then you hit it. I would say I hit a different type of mental exhaustion from really trying to up the production side. It was very different, just that critical listening. So it's a different type of, I wouldn't call it stress. I would call it more exhaustion. Whereas on the creative hardware side, I would call it more stress, because I know that that's the magic moment. The real magic happens mainly on the front end, right? Where we hit that in the muse moment, where the groove, the melodies, not that I can't do it afterwards. I can definitely supplement and cut and add it. But I found more just sheer exhaustion of the possibilities and knowing that I could fix things now. So there was really no excuse. I hear it and go, okay, we're going back. I thought I was done. Probably can relate to that, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So are we into this now? Because I have questions, and I can
go.
start firing away.
If I may just set the scene a little bit. So this is a hardware-based show. We're looking at ASF Stripe's hardware, and we're using that as a springboard, so to speak, to look at hardware in music production. I think it might be worth, before Eon, like you go mental with your questions, maybe David takes us through his current existing setup, which is, as you say, continuously.
I had one question that might kick it off.
Okay, go for it.
And that's, obviously, David, you made some decisions about what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, and it's not a pro DAW, anti DAW thing. It's just these are decisions that you've made. So perhaps you could tell us what you've decided and why, and then maybe show us around and talk a little bit about how your workflow works as a result.
Well, I actually appreciate that question more than you realize. So ASF Stripe is actually a concept of me using my father's, who's passed, sculptures, paintings, sketches, artwork as the covers and a lot of the, well, let's say it's what I call an imagined collaboration. So sometimes people don't realize he's actually passed. So kind of a what if, and it stemmed. Well, I'll go right to your question. When I was young, not only did I look at all the artwork and was fascinated by it, and but I also, I saw how he worked and all the sketching and all the drawing and the preparation that went into a painting. So he never went right. He would do abstract work, don't get me wrong. But he also, I saw how much he would work. He would a lot of times sketch. And then finally he would decide what was the best. So part of the hardware setup is producing a lot of sketches. So maybe 2 or 3, if I'm going down and working, I might do 3 or 4, usually 5 to 10 minute jams. And I will usually have 20, 30 ideas at least. I delete a lot of them too. big believer in destroying bad ideas. I'm not a precious person when it comes to my art. I know when it's not going to happen, or it's going to be an enormous amount of work. So anyways, to answer your question even further, and just tell me if I've answered it or if I need to redirect. So I have that Zoom live track, and that's got 12 tracks. I can produce stems in it. I can finish on there. So it is, in all sense, sort of, it's a recording box. And it's got a little, you can EQ, you can add one global effect across the board. You can do some panning, but it's a digital, but it's a mixer, you can, and so I'll take the modular. I've got everything kind of synced up, but I'm usually sketching onto that 20, 30, like I said, ideas. And maybe where I've moved on a little bit is, since I've had stems, certain ideas I will, I'm starting to move beyond accepting the final product, even though some of them come out pretty nice. And I don't know if someone was doing this method, I wouldn't say you have to do anything else. And I've put out 4 or 5 releases with this setup, essentially. Gear changes a little bit.
So was there a conscious attempt to copy or emulate your father's workflow? Was there something about software that meant it wouldn't be as easy to accomplish? I mean, what was your thinking there?
Well, I came from I was a drummer, and I played in bands and started to do. So I was a band guy, and I think it just was and I was in a group even eventually when I stepped out and got into writing more, where we were doing the hardware stuff. So I think it was just really, it was natural for me to work like this. And I've worked with some reel-to-reel and different type, Porta Studios and different things over the years. I had Pro Tools at one point. Software was definitely intimidating. I think there was nothing wrong with it. I think I didn't see a way initially to do both. So I needed to choose. Yeah. So I chose this, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there aren't any right and wrongs, as you know. It's just interesting to know what motivates people a lot of the time.
Yeah, I mean, so I love a certain amount of spontaneity in what I do, and I'm okay. I don't sit down. I have done it, but I don't sit and necessarily compose as much, writing verse choruses and everything, even though I enjoy doing that a lot. This is more kind of letting the gear have its will a little bit, because as you know, with modular, it's kind of like, let's see, I want to see what I got, let's see what you got, and then if we both like it, let's hit record.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
So the art we see in the studio, I mean, is that your father's, or is there a mixture?
There is. Actually, you're not seeing it right there. It's in here. I also purposely tried not to make it a museum, because that didn't feel right either. So I've pulled things out, put them on the walls. It's been, it's kind of like I can't get away from it now. It's become kind of part of how I do things, and sometimes I really enjoy it. And he's got so much work. He's got so much work to play with. The new cover that I have right now is a sketch, and I will play with them a little bit, colors and things, which I don't think he would mind, because I used to go with him and actually frame artwork of his with him. We would go and find pieces, and I'd say, hey, let's go find a frame. Let's work with this. So in a way, we were doing this a little bit, So anyways, with the studio, with this, this setup is all clocked by the Drum Brute Impact. it clocks. So I basically, I guess you can't see it on the screen. It's kind of weird.
On the right hand side there, is it? Above the
Yeah,
mix?
so that
Can you
MIDI's
point to it?
going. Yeah, I don't know. You can't see my. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but hopefully not. Because I keep moving it. Yeah, the drum brute impacts in the back there with the orange kind of strip, but I clocked that into. I have a little MIDI box. I don't know where it is right now. I must have fell on the floor. It did. Little MIDI Solutions Quadra through, and it goes into that, and I have 4 outs. One goes into the modular, into the Erica MIDI to clock module.
Okay.
And then one goes into the Boss Looper, the red pedal. One goes into the Mini Freak. And then the Mini Freak's got a through. So I can send that out to another thing if I have to. And then usually one either goes to the subharmonic. The pedal, the Vangen pedal way on the left corner has a CV in. So
Oh, wow.
I can, the Mini Freak's nice because I can then start syncing things. Once I clock that, it'll clock CV. So then I can go through the modulars.
Clock. I mean, the little one's got clock and CV out. I'm assuming that has as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when I pick gear, I tend to I get real excited if it's something says sync in or things like that, but it all stems from, and really it came down to what worked. The drum brute impact, for whatever reason, has a really good tight clock, MIDI clock. And I like just having the two things I love about MIDI for the live jam. I didn't want that. I was kind of thinking about this. I didn't want that studio with the 8 synths that all had MIDI, and you see the person kind of moving the chair over to one side of the studio, and now I'll play this, and then they move over, like these beautiful Berlin School orchestrations, and they're awesome. This is very quick. You see my hand. I might be doing volume automations, filters, and everything's happening really,
it's almost a live setup, isn't it?
It is. It's almost a live setup. And it's kind of built like that because the speed and being able to improvise and everything is really critical. Because when I'm creating, there's not usually, it's almost like a classic, get a riff going with a groove maybe in your mind, and then I kind of just go, okay, let's kind of like get this going and see. But what I want to do is have control. Everything's got a clock first thing, or else it's, if it's not clocking well, it's just a disaster. Oh, the other thing I was saying about MIDI was just the brilliance of start stop. So I have a sub mixer under that drum brute impact too. You can kind of see it over, right there. So I can get all the outs, everything in there. So, I can take out, any of the drums or kicks while I'm playing, or I can just ratchet and do cool things, so
the submix is just for the drum brute, so
just for the drums. Yeah. And then it's got an
I
aux send, so I can send like the this pedal or something like that. I can run it through there if I want to do some cool filters or different things. And then this is actually the reamper I just got from a recommendation because I had a Boss distortion I wanted to use. I was getting a lot of noise. So my buddy said, just take it to the reamper and you'll be fine. So that's actually, a little over $100. It's not cheap, but unfortunately noise is a problem sometimes. So
I get that.
Yeah.
unnecessary noise. You know what I mean? Like you can tell yourself it's okay, but when you hear it in the monitors or in the headphones, you're like, oh yeah, that can't be good. Yeah.
So do certain parts of the studio lend themselves to certain functions all the time? Do you try and mix it up? Do you have a way of working, or do you try to avoid having a way of working?
Well, I used to avoid having a way of working, and now I'm trying to have a way of working. So this is pretty permanent. Most of this stuff, the looper is relatively new. It's not my first looper, but it's one of my favorite loopers. It had MIDI. It's got some drums, and it's got 2 channels you can see where I can loop, multiple things on. In the past, I was that, oh, I don't need MIDI. I can just tap tempo in guy. And there is something to be said for it, but I would flip it around and say, yeah, but what about when you might want MIDI,
Yeah.
And trust me, when you get about 4 or 5 things going, you go, yeah, that might have been a good idea. And sometimes you don't, but why not have it? It's better to have it for something like that. So
Yeah.
yeah. So
I mean, it's a good piece. It's a good way of keeping everything, well, literally keeping everything together and keeping everything succinct without having much latency, anything like that.
mhm.
Now, a few weeks ago when we were doing some prep for the show, you said that your rig was consistently changing.
That was a
but you
problem in the
just,
past. Yes.
that was the problem in the past. So we've kind of come from a different way now. What's going on?
So you're right. So when I say my rig, so there's certain things that are fixtures. Obviously the Zoom live track is a fixture. The drum brute impact and the submixer are fixtures now. It took me a while to make that decision, but within the last year, the problem was in the middle, the modular and the mini freak. And you're right. I would intentionally create setups for releases and stuff. But what I started to find, it was just a gateway to buy new stuff and try out new stuff. And it really, I know it's so bad. It's
Slippery slope.
and at some point it has to stop, right?
It doesn't serve the music, does it?
No. So I've more recently decided that I'm not changing this really, right? I have it set up, I've got a few racks. You can see I can move things here. So you got to have a little flexibility, but
Yeah.
the clocking, the Zoom live track, the looper, all that stuff are what makes it really work. And really the mini freak is so good. It's every once in a while you take things out of your setup and you look back and you go, why did I take that out? And I had a micro freak for a while. So when this came out, I was like, okay, it just does so much. And I'm trying not to talk too much, but the one thing that's really brilliant about a lot of stuff like this and the drum brute impact, it is purposely designed for this use. So it is a live performance. There's so many performance features on these. Randoms, ratchetings, stuff. It's so easy. Don't have to program it. I mean, the drum brute impact's got different, 16th note, 8th notes, and they all sound different. And it's really cool when you learn, unless you keep it, you don't really learn how, oh, wow, I can hit the 8th notes just tap it on like triplets or fifths. And you start creating, that's the hardware jam kind of stuff, that you can't really explain to people. You just feel it and you're just like, ooh, yeah. I didn't even know I was going to do that, but you're like, this is brilliant sounding. So,
and you can have varying amounts of it as well.
Yeah. So the only way you can control
Just
yourself. Yeah. So, I've got the modular and that stuff, obviously you can move some stuff in and out, but I had to make some case decisions too. And it's all really tough. Yeah. I've sold a lot of miscellaneous stuff. I'm not the kind of person that can keep stuff in cloth. I don't really want it. I want my instruments. I want the stuff that I really connect with. I'm not a collector. So, and I don't really recommend it, collecting, unless, that's your thing.
So you have your boxes which you are appreciative of and that contribute to your sound, and anything else is left by the wayside, so to speak. You're not so much interested in having the gear there one day maybe to pick back up again. It's more about I've got this now and this is what I like and we're going to run with it.
Unless it's really proven to be a special piece that maybe just isn't working right now. Like I have a sub 37, and I do love it, but it's just not. It would be in the way right now. It really would. And again, I'd be that guy kind of swiveling around on the chair. Now I'm going to go to the subharmonic and do the solo.
Sounds like you're shying away from the cape wearing end of it.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. It's just,
Is that a Nord wave in the background you got there as well? I mean, there is some.
It's a wave. Yeah, there is. There's a Nord wave, and it's there's a Hydrosynth too, that I don't use at all right now. And in fact, I just told someone they could borrow it because I'm not going to.
Wow.
I just put it like I have no plans to use it this year. But I don't have a lot of those.
He did say that. Just
the wave. The wave is an awesome. I use it for multi-tracking because I can go over there, play it like a keyboard, and everything is already compressed. It's ready to record, and it's a really amazing. Got it from a really good friend, so it has a little sentimental value. And
does it have a lot of onboard effects then for you to control the sound and really get it right?
It's really. I could talk about the Nord Wave and why they really hit it out of the park with that particular sense. So
it kind of leads me to a question, really, and that's like, well, when it comes to like creating a track, obviously you like to jam a fair bit, but when it comes to capturing it, are you recording the main take as a jam? Do you do overdubs? Do you do edits? Is it different each song? How does it kind of work out in practice?
Yeah, so usually there's, you can kind of see things are wired up. So I might usually in the Mini Freak, maybe there's a sequence I like or something working with the modular that I like, and to answer your question, I will do some multi-tracking. I can't resist, to be honest with you. I love the multi-track. If there's, top 10 things Dave loves, multi-tracking. First thing that comes out, what do you want to be when you grow up? Somebody that multi-tracks. Yeah. So, but the core of it is usually has to kind of be the drums and everything. A lot of it gets printed, and it can be a little stressful when you're improvising something really nice and the congas or whatever, the cowbell on the drum board impacts too loud and you hit it, you're like, oh man, why did I do that? So it's interesting. You, like anything else, you learn, you don't go to 10 right away. You just kind of inch it up, It's always better to be quieter than be too loud, in my opinion.
So when it comes to the rig itself, you've recently bought yourself a looper, the RC. Is it RC 300 or the 6? Is it
500? I think. Yeah, it's a newer one. Yeah.
This is is that your newest purchase?
Yeah, I think that's the newest one. And I talked about doing it for about a year or two, and I had a friend who is very good at producing music, and I mean making a lot of music and making it regularly, and he's a good mentor for me. Get the looper, you're gonna love it, and that's the most recent, and I really I've always loved loopers, and I've used them, Loopy Pro and stuff on the iPad, and I've had a Electro Harmonics one, I think the 360 or something, or 720, but this one is the quality of the sound is really cool, and it can do a lot. It's a little fiddly. It's worth it though. It's one of the things I find it's worth it, and it's got amazing drum samples. And what I've been doing lately is overdubbing some of the samples. So I won't go into a lot of detail, but it has 4 parts, and you can turn off parts. So you can say, just give me the snare, just give me the hats, just give me the kick. Usually you always take out part 4, which is the crashes, or the fills. So it's really cool. You can all of a sudden, like, I just want to punch a kick in, right? And you kind of find your sample. So again, I'm playing live. All I got to do is hit on. It's already synced. All of a sudden, the snare comes in, crack. I can't tell you how much that added to my setup to have that extra dimension. Then you had like these two percussion. I could tune, so I could basically know I was going to punch in this with the bigger kick, and I could take the drum brew and impact and make it more mid-rangey, and you're kind of like, I'm setting you up, right? You think, this is the drums, and like,
get the punchy one, and then
I haven't hit the punch yet. So, but that was kind of an unintended consequence of getting it, and me also limiting how much gear I have. And I was like, well, what else can it do? Because there's really not a lot of sound sources if you're, well, take away the modular, but there's not as many sound sources in front of that setup. If you're really breaking it down, you're like, well, how do you like, well, I mean, how much, you got to be creative too, and think about those decisions.
So as you've incorporated this looper into the rig, what is it doing for your flow, so to speak? What is it that's bringing in? What is it that looping has to bring into your
because looping is amazing. No, because the juxtaposition between a loop and a sequence is brilliant, right? In my opinion, they're two different total feels. You can see the thing with something like this, you can tell it to loop for a minute, right? But also say, but stay in time. So you can kind of be drifty, very melodic, so all of a sudden you can have da na 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 na, and your sequence like going dun 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 dun. Everything else is kind of very, because as we know, it is very hard with sequencers to get them to relax. Loopers relax that's actually their sweet spot, So to me, it's that juxtaposition of having that loose kind of melodic flow. I'm much more melodic on a looper than any other on a sequencer. Sequencers for me are more still really rhythmic. Not always, but you know what I mean. So it adds, for me personally, it gives me the ability to write quite differently, in a way that I like very extended loops. I like extended sequences too. So with the looper, it's almost like you can kind of fool the person to feel like someone's playing it. They sort of are, but you know what I mean? Yeah, to some extent. And then it's kind of, looping it. So, but that particular one has really high quality too. And I do really enjoy the better fidelity of it, because I am getting a little bit more sensitive to the quality of my production. I've done enough albums where I kind of went back, and I'm okay with letting them go for the most part, but I kind of, probably everybody does this, but I like to assess sometime afterwards and say, all right, maybe next time I'll do this, or this.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean that there was anything wrong with the last one. It might just mean I feel like doing something slightly different. I started off being very, very squeaky clean. Everything was really pristine. And I do prefer to dirty things up a fair bit now. Yeah.
Oh,
that was a conscious decision.
Yeah. Oh, I love anything that can run through amp simulations. I think I was mentioning it. Any kind of tape delays. I love all that stuff. But I think part of it too was the dynamics. I felt like I needed a little more disciplined production to get the dynamics that I'd actually composed in the final product, because it was hard sometimes to listen to something and go, man, it didn't lift here, but it's there.
Oh, yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah, or how am I going to drop it? So that is one reason I do love the you can do all this, of course, in the box too, but there's something fluid about the jamming side of things. And of course, you can do hardware jams, you can do live, you can kind of get your live skills, kind of conceptualize what you're going to do, because that's a whole different beast. So I could probably go out with a certain number of pieces now and survive 20, 30 minutes.
What is that? Like,
Survive.
to be able to do that as well?
Survive? Yeah. No. Oh, honestly, I'll probably do a little bit, but I really want. I do want to go back out, but I want to go out as an ensemble. I don't think I could pull the dynamic stuff off. So yeah, I do have some ideas. But I don't think I'd want to go out by myself because I don't know. That just seems really, I don't know if I could pull that off. I don't think I would be happy with it. Maybe,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
There's while you've been telling us everything, David, there's been a few people that have joined in the chat. I wanted to just double check. It's the RC500. Hydrofighter just asked, what's the name of the looper? Is it MIDI compatible?
He also loves loopers.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, MIDI compatible. Absolutely. Let me pull it out.
Absolutely MIDI compatible. Survey channel has joined us into. Oh, here we go. So
yeah, MIDI compatible. There you go.
Hang on, let me just solo you out there so we can see. Beautiful. That's what we need.
I think it's got the little TRS. Don't freak out. It's okay. And it's I think it's type B. Oh God, yeah, it's type B. So
right.
It's okay. Again, just get the I think Make Noise and a couple of them make them really cheap. So you can.
Yeah, you just have to know which it is, don't you?
Yeah, a little research and you'll save like $20.
Subharmonicon. I've got my microfeet clocking it at the moment.
I think the subharmonicons, the more is type A, or the one you see a little bit more. So, it's but so yeah, it is. It's all those things. Yeah, it's great. It's. A lot of people get the big one, the RC505. You can see in my setup, there's no way I'm going to fit that on the table. And
yeah, what's the difference?
And I didn't really want it to be all looper. I just wanted a feature that as a feature. You know what I mean? It's like, so I like the red too. Yeah.
It's interesting that the red is nice. It's interesting how you say it wouldn't fit on the table. I've been looking at the RC600, which I believe, as far as it was over here, it's been discontinued. But obviously, you've got the 505, which is that tabletop. It's that very classic beat maker looper. I once had the 300 back in Vietnam, and that was beautiful. And but the 600 again for the feet, the tapping, the channels. So it's an interesting one. I'd like to see where it comes forward. Before we carry on, I just want to say survey channel and Bendu is in the chat as well. And there's something going on here. Bendu asks about survey channel's SoundCloud drop, and I just wanted to put a special mention to it in the Discord. Yes, in the Discord channel, Ben, survey channel put a SoundCloud link to a little release that he's planning to come out at some point, and it's an absolute trip. I don't know if you guys have listened to it.
I haven't heard it yet. I haven't had a look yet.
I started to, and then somebody, probably a kid, like, Dad, I was like, I'm trying to listen to Survey Channel. I did see it though.
It starts absolutely from my subjective experience on this plane, it starts very kind of, as you would say, like classic in inverted commas for people watching back on Spotify. I'm doing the bunny rabbit ears, classic ambient, and then it just goes into this massive trip of drones and beautiful soundscapes. And he uses samples from shortwave radio, which is just absolutely insane. There's a website where he goes to where you can you can record in real time.
So cool.
It's phenomenal. It is. If you are listening back, or if you're watching back, or if you're a member of the community, go check it out on Discord, on the Audionautic Discord channel. The link is in the description. It's an absolute trip. It's an absolute trip. So I'd like to see more. Is there much looping? That's what I want to know. Loop for days. How many channels? Coming back to the looping before we move on to the live section of the show. How many loops, how many layers can you have on that looper, David?
Just the right amount.
Just the right amount.
No, I'm not going to tell you. No, it's got 2 channels, and then you can loop over each, so you can layer. It's kind of perfect. because I think you've probably found with loopers, it can get a little. It's hard to have to. I guess if you can do all the outs, it's just enough at some point.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm not. Maybe I'd feel different if I was doing live, but yeah, you can do 2 channels. They're both. I do wish they had separate outs. It would be really cool to be able to you can get it to send channel 1 to one side, channel 2 to the other. It said I was going to mention that. I was glad you said it. There's some really good videos on getting little MIDI, doing some MIDI automation with this, and it pulls. There's an immense amount of functionality in that pedal that I'm not getting right now. So again, as I commit to the looper, I can start to open up my imagination on getting more of it out. If I start that nonsense of swapping things in and out again, that I've done a lot of, I'm not going to ever do that, if that makes sense. So that's why I'm very committed to this setup. I'm going to keep saying it. I'm committed to this.
I like
This
it.
is
I
the
like it.
setup.
I was talking about this last week. I am very what's the phrase? I am very ill-disciplined and I don't commit to anything. I'll build a template before I go live. I'll say, right, I'm sticking to this template, and then as soon as I get into my third loop, I'm like, fuck it, I'm going to bring something else in, because that's
I know the guy with the 80-second show has no discipline. I'm gonna, yeah, I hear you. Yeah, we can be very hard on ourselves, but I know what you're saying. So yeah, it is. I mean, it's a discipline. It's not all just I feel like doing this now. When I'm not feeling, I don't do it. And there's something to be. Maybe you're not creative that moment. Doesn't mean you can't go in and get something done. That's kind of my belief, because this is a lot. There's a lot to this, even for people need to be kind to themselves. This is the long game. In my opinion.
Yeah. I want to put that on a t-shirt. That's been my shout out through the week, just like the personal mantras of being kind to everything. It turns out Survey Channel actually used in that aforementioned Discord drop. He used a towel sampler to resample and loop materials for the drones themselves, which is, again, I would love to see a workflow on that. That'd be a very good way of doing it. And yeah, we are also joined by Exit Chamber. Hello, Exit Chamber. Lovely to see you here, man. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you ever so much for joining us. We're talking all about hardware, talk about looping, talk about ways in which we can incorporate hardware into the world in which we do. Ace of Stripe, David, is there anything that we have missed? Is there anything we haven't covered? But we want to take this notion of creating using hardware and live tracking, and we want to turn that into the live, where Eon Lake is going to take over for a little bit. Is there anything we've missed before we do, though?
Well, the one little sticky note that we talked about for the show, there's not a right way, but a lot of times there is a better way. And that's really what I would hope I can help for anyone listening. There's absolutely no perfect way, but you will learn over time some things work better. And if something's working, like I said, if the drum brute impact is clocking everything and everything is clocked, please don't change that. Is kind of what I tell myself, because it doesn't always clock. And why it doesn't always clock, I don't know, but it's working now. So it's been, great. So I think that's the last piece. Yeah. Let's go to Eon Lake.
I like that. Yeah. I like that notion. Again, there is no right way. And that's, I think I want to reiterate that before we move on. This is not a kind of a, last week we were in the box with Hydra Fighter. This week we're out of the box with UASF Stripe. And it's not a case of in the box versus out the box. That's not what we're getting at. We're just looking at different ways in which we can produce, and that's all. And now we want to be able to take this, and this is something that we talk about fairly consistently and or we allude to, for want of a better phrase, the notion of taking the things that we make, taking the 80 to 90 tracks that we put inside our DAW and turning that into a live show, because that in itself is a problematic thing to do. Now, I feel, ASF Stripe, as you are for the majority creating, obviously you're using a bit of Cubasis, but creating mainly through hardware and going into your mix of that, recreation, so to speak, in theory, is not too much of a difficult issue for you. Is that fair? Or am I completely off the mark there?
No, it's relatively easy at the moment, but it's gonna, I would like to continually, I would like to be able to get something like the Mo2 Ultralight with the DC coupled and start to connect more to the computer. But at the moment, it really works well. So, yeah.
If it ain't broke.
I know that's the thing, right? So baby steps, right? And
yeah. I think these things have to evolve, really, don't they? You make some decisions, you see how it works out, you tweak. Nobody just plans it all out and does it in one go.
I mean, you can't just have an easy solution now. You have to work for it. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah. Well, what would the fun be? And just, all right, done that, got it all right. It's all a journey, isn't it?
Yeah. You see that a lot.
Aces, right?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. You see that with modular. You don't have to, it's not like I'm modular, I'm not modular. In fact, I would really encourage people the hard thing is the discipline. We go back to that, right? You absolutely should. Here's the thing. You don't have to go get this. You can go get VCV rack, right? You don't have to spend anything. It comes with all those modules, right? If you have any kind of computer, just explore it, right? Start that way. Don't necessarily feel like you need to go and get a big hardware setup, because when I was just saying, that's something that a lot of us are, we're seeing a lot of things getting ported there, and we're going, man, I don't know. It's so there's a lot of ways you can do it nowadays. Maybe too many.
I know what you mean. There's maybe too many. I think that's a very good point. And I think the process of evolution is important. It's right. And I think I don't know. Maybe I didn't mean to solo myself. That's incredibly narcissistic. Let's try and push this back to everyone. There we go. Let's put that back. That's a lot better. The notion of the evolution is the fun, in short of it. And I work with a lot of kids, and I work with a lot of like that kind of those new generation of people who are kind of like making out their first tracks and stuff, and they want to be famous yesterday, and that's the key thing. They want to make a hit track yesterday, and it's about trying to understand that you create your own sound and you create your own ideals through that natural exploration of what we do. And it's not necessarily about what you spit out at the other end, but it's about what you learn before you get to spit something out in that regard. I don't want to digress too quick, but too readily, but I do feel like this is where Eon Lake comes in, because Eon Lake did a wonderful set for the Where a Fox North. Which one was it?
London.
London. Okay, South.
South, effectively, yeah.
He did a wonderful set for this, and we were talking about this in the green room ahead of the show for weeks in advance, and you were working through the notion of taking something you've created in the studio and then condensing it down into an easily transportable and single case, might I add, way of getting it around. So can you take us through that process and about how you moved from your tracks being in the studio to performing them live? Can you start with that, and then we can talk about your workflow?
So I'll preface all of this with saying I don't really have all the answers. What I have is at least the same amount of questions as everyone else, if not more. I did what I always do when planning this, and that's think about it for way too long. But for me, the challenges are the stuff I do is quite maximalist. It's very layered. There's a lot going on. There's only one me. I've got two hands, same as anyone else. There's a limit to what I can do. Then there's the aspect of what do I want a live show to be? What do I want to be doing? I'm a drummer by trade, but I'm not going to sit there playing drums while the rest of the music plays. It just that would be pretty weird. I play a bit of keyboards, I play a bit of bass, but not to any great standard. maybe keyboards is probably the thing that I'm most comfortable with, if not drums, to be fair. So I had to think about what I wanted to do. I did not want the show to be possible without my intervention, without me guiding it, making it do what it's doing. Although it's obviously it's possible to automate everything and just do a new order and walk off stage and leave it playing. Didn't want to do that. So also, like you alluded to, there was the size thing. I had to carry all this stuff. I don't have any roadies. I got no road crew at all. Same as anyone else. So it had to be very small. I played around a little bit on my tray I have on top of a keyboard stand just to figure out what's going to help me. I figured out early on that a laptop provides so much functionality in such a small space. You know, I mean, even Caterina Barbieri is a modular aficionado. She uses a laptop for effects on her modular rack. So, you know, it doesn't have to be, you know, sequencing or anything else. It does so many things in one little box that you can just use it for processing if you need to. So I figured that was going on there. I didn't want to run into CPU issues with too many VSTs running. I couldn't take my hardware synths with me really because they're too big and heavy. It wasn't somewhere I was going to be able to drive to easily. So I figured it was going to be in the box, a fair amount of audio. But what I was going to do is I was going to extract various bits from the arrangements so that I could play those. So I would have a load of standard stems, you know, like bass, drums, you know, pads, arps, effects, vocals, things like that. I'd have 8 tracks of standardized audio material that I could run through effects and mess around with. And I will have removed parts from some of those stems for me to play on MIDI instruments that were set up as well on a couple of extra channels. I did have the Micro Freak with me, tucked underneath the push, so I could use that. And I did have some effects running through that. I was using the SP404 as a sound card and effects box for the Micro Freak. Same patches that I used in the original song a lot of the time. So came to the conclusion afterwards I didn't really gain a lot through doing that, other than I had to play it myself, you know, rather than just bounce it. But anyway, what I was going to do is share my screen, if this doesn't completely crash my machine, and just show you the arrangement where I started to organize all of this. So just give me a sec.
This is hope that you've got the permissions right on this occasion.
No, I've done it before. Yeah, I've been through that. Right.
Why are you doing that? Hydrofight. Why are you doing that? Just before I share the screen with you, Hydrofight has gone back to VC Rack after the conversation last week. Took a long break, but he's exploring it again. Again, just to reiterate what ASF Stripe was saying, is that you don't need to go out and spend a load of money. VC Rack completely, as far as I'm aware, completely free.
There's a free version and a paid version, which is quite cheap, but yeah.
And it comes with a lot of modules, you know.
Yes.
So you really, there's, especially if you're starting with modular, you're just like, that's plenty. Yeah, so
yeah, that's what you need.
Super cool.
There's plenty of tutorials and stuff as well, but the fun of it is getting staged. But yeah. So yeah, for people listening back on Spotify or Apple podcasts, this I've just shared the screen and you can see Eon Lake's beautiful Ableton template, which I'm surprised uses the light color screen. But hey, there's no judgment here. Let's go for it.
No, that's me. I'm just kind of used to it, really. So this is, I took all the songs from their original arrangements and I made one big live arrangement and I dumped them in there. So each song occupies a bunch of tracks. And then the next song starts from the next channel up. If you look at the mixer, I've got 8 groups at the beginning. And I've got kicks, drums, bass, mids I put, which is like pads or anything that occupies the middle range of the frequency spectrum. I've got ARPs and I've got leads. Can't remember what 7 was. I didn't name it on this. 7 is normally pads, actually. It's on my whiteboard over there. And 8 is effects and samples and ambience and things like that. So these groups are set up, and then I chuck the whole song into the next however many channels are needed. There's a bunch of audio. Some of it I had to record because when I actually do the songs themselves, some of the synths are playing live sometimes, because I can bring every instrument into my mixer and I've got effects on every channel. I don't really need to necessarily record it as long as it remembers its sound. If it's got patch memory, I can just build that into the part and it will recall and just play. So I had to record some of it to freeze loads of them. This arrangement's huge and it takes about at least 5 minutes to open. So you got nothing on the first 8 tracks because they're the groups that I'm going to bounce it all to. And then I take the various sounds in each song, and instead of sending them to the master, I send them to the groups depending on what the sound is. So that then I can export the first song as stems. But what I would do is I would take out various sections. I'd disable some of the MIDI parts so that I had to play that and bounce the rest out. Then I've got the next song down here, and it just carries on. It goes down and to the right as you work your way through the set. And this is just set up so that I can try and hear the songs back to back a little bit, figure out the order and how they're going to overlap and stuff, because I like my sets to be continuous. It's just one of the things I like.
That's fair.
Don't question it. But I use this to bounce out audio. Now, if I need to take any of the MIDI parts, I can copy and paste them in, because all of this is going to go into another arrangement that is just these first 8 tracks, and then some VSTs, a track for the mini freak so that I can play it live so that the monitor's on all the time. And that was it, really. So I used this to bounce it out. I'm not showing the live arrangement because there's much less to see in it, really. It is just a load of audio files and a load of chops. And I was launching it as clips rather than, I didn't want to use, what's it called? Got a mental block. I didn't want to use this mode and just hit play. I wanted to time the transitions and fire the songs off and make changes. Some of the songs were edited, so I was deliberately chopping ends off and things like that. But yeah, that was my approach, was I'm going to get it all in one place first. This just won't play. There's just way too much going on. My computer can't handle it. But what I can do is disable everything except one song, bounce out the bits that I want from that, then shut that down, get the next song. And that's what I used to extract it all out so that I had all the audio parts I needed. I also took a few things and chucked them in the same folder so that I could load them into a sampler. I knew I'd have the SP404 with me, so if I needed like a transition sounder effect, I could just hit a key and play an ambient sample to help me in between songs. But that was essentially it. So that what I ended up with was I'm launching clips. One of my biggest criteria when I thought about what's your brief for doing this is it's all about the music. Everything I do is about the music. So I'm not going to go on stage and sacrifice quality or the fact that it doesn't sound right. Just, out of some vanity thing of look at me doing my thing. The first thing's got to be the music. That's just the way I am. So I didn't give myself a massive amount to do. There were all sorts of little bits and bobs I had to chop out just so that the songs didn't clash too much when I'm trying to get from one to the other. I didn't give myself massive 7-minute solos to play or anything like that. But at the same time, I was busy throughout, and I enjoyed it. I was doing something. But But at the same time, the sound quality was there because I bounced a lot of stuff together. I didn't have to run it all live as VSTs, because that was one thing I was going to do. I was going to revoice them all as VSTs, because I couldn't take the hardware, but I couldn't run that many VSTs. I didn't want to get into all the patch management and so on. So I kept some of it audio. There's stuff in here that I can't even remember how I made the sounds in the first place as well. That's kind of intrinsic to the sound of the song. So some of it had to be audio and samples for that reason. But yes, it ended up with, how many channels have I used for this? Mm, 88 channels. That's not too bad, actually. Got some live synths at the end. Got a channel for the sub 37 and the MS-20 in case I fancy playing anything over the top. But yeah, 88 channels. I think it was 6 songs or something. Bounce them all out into stems, and then you can play the bits over the top of it, add in transition effects, sampling, stuff like that. Yeah, and that was my approach for that particular one. I'd probably do things a little bit differently. I like the idea of the fact that you've got a mixer. I'm using, what's it called? What are you called? Launch Control XL. It's got 8 channels. You can bounce them up, but I prefer to just keep it to 8. That's enough to be thinking about. You've got, send effects ability and so on. I was doing a lot of the mixing and messing around with effects on the push, really, because it's got a good display. You can see what's happening.
I got a question, if it's okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Time for someone else to talk.
Well, it's going to be a quick question, unfortunately. How do you handle monitoring? So you've got this kind of set up, probably with kind of ideas of your levels, but then now you're out live.
Well, there wasn't a lot of, there were some changes I had to make between songs. Largely the levels were kind of okay from song to song. I say that, if you listen to it back, the drums on the 4th track, Blood, they came in so loud that it made me jump. I thought the sound engineer was going to get really pissed off with me.
Then you just keep jumping, yeah, everybody, come on.
Yeah, exactly. But they really did make me jump because it was so loud. But there was fold back on the stage, so I could hear it from there. But I also had my headphones plugged into the SB404 because I kind of thought it might be difficult to hear detail if it was noisy in there. I had no idea how clear the sound would be, so I had some headphones plugged into the SP, which is the output of that was what was going into the desk anyway. So that let me hear it, and I also recorded it from the headphones out as well.
Yeah, that's just been my experience. Not to go in a rabbit hole, but that's from playing live a lot. That's one of my biggest hesitations. When you're like, "Oh, do you want to play live?" I'm like, I don't know. Like, where am I playing? Yeah. You know what I mean? What venue?
Yeah. I'd never planned to do this, and it was like, well, how the hell am I going to do that then? Because this is clearly a studio project where someone's just gone crazy and hasn't bothered to think about trying to replicate it live. And then it came along and it's like, oh, how am I going to do that? And this is my starting point. I would probably change it next time, maybe change it after that. But I imagine that's the fun of it. But I was toying with the idea of having these 8 channels at the beginning of everything that I do so that I can easily bounce it down for live use.
It's like a mix within a mix, so to speak. When you say you change the way you do it, that's kind of where I was coming out, because with my system, like now I've got 16 channels and I'm trying my best to avoid going beyond those 16 channels, like I say, in the notion and the idea that they could be recreated live, right? So is the question at that point, is it a case of forward thinking, so to speak? If you're going to make a track, are you going to set yourself a certain limitation to ensure that you can recreate it? Like, I think back to my biggest. I think my biggest project file is 93 tracks. That's Axis. I did with Spectre. And I mean, there's no way that it's ever going to. I mean, my computer died listening when I was producing it. But I don't think I'd ever do that again. I think I'd stick as close as I can to the 16.
Yeah, but I mean, there's rationalization that you can do if you want to play it live. I mean, if you're using 4 bass sounds or something, you can, and you've mixed it, right? You've got your balance. So all you need to do is just reroute it and bounce them onto one audio track, and you've got, you know, you can start to sort of rationalize it down to something more doable. And like I said, you can leave bits out that you intend to play and so on. It doesn't have to be everything, but from a certain point of view, you've already got your levels, haven't you? You just need to send them somewhere different. And then, I mean, you could have 150 tracks if you want, all these channels running off into the sunset with a million things going on them, but all the sound comes through the first 8, and you do your control there. And it's always on the same channel. And then like your source sound could be way up here somewhere, you know, different on every song if you want. As long as you've got a machine that can run it.
I think that's super cool. I mean, you've it's ambitious really what you did live, you know. See, I would go the other route. I would play it safe. I'd have like my Mackie mixer, the drum machine, a couple things, and I would just minimalize the heck of it with a bunch of delay and reverbs. But I like what you did, don't get me wrong, because what you said was really important, that really at the end of the day it wasn't about you, it was about what the song and how you wanted it heard by other people. And that really is, we all say that all the time, serve the song. That's awesome what you did, really, honestly, all that hard work. And it worked. I heard it worked. So
Well, you can, I mean, it's mainly about just sitting, because there are so many different ways you can go about this. It's just make a decision and have a couple of guiding principles, and it could be different for a different type of music. You know, you could go a completely different way with it because you've got different guiding principles. But I just needed some constraints to stop me from thinking and planning forever and never actually doing it.
Well, it's nice that you had some songs, because, you know, a big thing now is just go out and jam, and I love it. You know, don't get me wrong, but it's it is what it is, right? It's a jam, you know. And then, like I said, if you mix it in with a place where the sound hasn't really been thought about a lot, it gets. I worry about the listeners. I'm like, at the end of the day, I want somebody to enjoy it. I want them to walk away with a really great experience, is how I see it. So if I'm even a listener and I'm out listening, you know, I'm thinking, my God, you got to fix this. You know, we got this has got to be good. But no, that's super cool, and it did work. So now you got it all set up. So don't lose that computer. Back it all up, and that's your live.
But every time you change songs, you know, you've got to do it all again. And maybe I'll do it differently next time. I don't know. We'll see. I
think there's an interesting way of looking at it. I want to come to that in a second. I just want to come back a little bit to a comment by Bendu. He says he has a very similar workflow to you, Eon Lake, but instead of chucking all the songs into one place, he makes the live stems. To make the live stems, he has projects per song. And this is a question for Bendu. I'm curious. Does that
so many questions?
Yeah, so many questions. I'm curious. Does that mean that you're opening up projects between songs, or do you then collate that one further? That's
because mine take forever to load.
Yes, well, this is it. I'm the same. My templates take, again, similar to you. They take about 5 minutes to load up, and even then, it's a bit straggly. And that's where I'm at with this. It's like I'm at this whole kind of condensing down from. As Hydrofighter says it quite lovingly, he says from my puny 16 channel, I want to condense it down even further just to make it more, because, like I said, I've got stems that, you know, 60 to 80 going onwards. It's about condensing that down. How do you make those cuts? How do you keep it authentic to the track while also trying to recreate it live? And so by long story short or short story long, Bendu, how does that work? How do you condense that further down? Are you opening up projects? I can't, maybe you can have multiple instances of Ableton open at once. I don't know. That's my question. Tell us more.
Yeah, a lot of things I hadn't even considered there. See, but this is why we talk about this stuff and different approaches, because I might well have a real forehead slapping moment.
But this is okay. So it comes back here. Oh no, he makes stems for all the songs, and then they go into 8-channel projects. Everything. Okay, so we have a further.
That's what I did though. Yeah, this isn't the final project. This is the one I used to export all the stems out of and kind of decide what I was doing. And then the live project itself, it's got less than 20 channels, probably 15 actually. The 8 for the audio and a few extra bits and pieces for me to play around with, the things that I'm going to do on top of it all as well. And yeah, it was a lot quicker to load that one. And my laptop could play it easily and I could mess around and do my thing.
Yeah, I think it's, once you get into the world of opening up DAWs and they come through and stuff like that, you do run the risk of crashing, overheating, lack of charging, all that stuff, you know. And it's an interesting one. Sunwarper, who is on paternity, I hope that little Sunwarper Jr. is enjoying the show. He says he's never taken to the DAW live set, but he's always fascinated by it. Hybrid or DAWless live sets just seem to flow for me. And I wonder if that is the same for you two, in the sense of like, once you've got a live set, or once you've got something that's finite, ASF Stripe coming back down to your set, it's finite and it's there and you know it deeply and it's in and out. It's like an extension of who you are, and therefore the music itself flows a bit more intrinsically.
I don't know about that. I don't want to say that. That's a leap. But I would say that I know it. And I know what to expect a little bit, and I know how to adjust. So that's what I've learned about live, is things do happen. Not all the time, but crazy stuff happens. So I would be way too, my past experiences would be playing on my mind a lot. And that's what, you know, I guess that's why I have a bigger hesitation when I think about doing it. I go, ooh, because that's the first thing that comes to mind. Well, what's the sound like? Are there monitors? What am I going to be able to hear? Because when I started doing a lot of this, I did a project called Red Spells Red with one of my friends, and he was a good engineer, but we just went out and improv'd a lot. And sometimes I just couldn't hear what was happening at all. And it was really, it was tough. So I would say that if just thinking about it right now, just to be quick, I'd probably take out the Mackie, maybe the live track. I might take it out. I know it so well. Looper, drum machine, maybe the Mini Freak. And I'd have some things set up on the looper as a backup. And I would just hope for the best, you know? You know, because I would just be terrified to take a laptop or something out. And there's nothing wrong with it. I just would go, what's plan B? That's the first thing. I'd be going, what's plan B? You know, as long as you have a plan B. Because it reminded me of a story. I was living in DC, and we drove all the way up to New York, and we played a show, and it was kind of important to us. There wasn't a lot of people, but there were some people there. And the bass player, we had the first song was so great. It felt great. We could hear it. Got to the second song. Halfway through it, the bass player broke a string. Guess who didn't bring a bass string? Right? We were all the way up in New York. We just packed up. That was it.
Wow.
No plan B. No extra bass strings.
But in answer to Mr. Warper's question, and Miss Chewy's managed to sandwich it in there between feeds. I don't really see a distinction between DAW, hybrid, DAWless. It makes no difference to me. It's accomplishing the same thing. I mean, you know, I can play a sequence on my computer. I can program it into the Moog. I can program it into a number of different devices. It doesn't really matter what device is playing it if it's a sequence. I think maybe he's just coming from a logic-y sort of viewpoint, whereas it doesn't really have that whole live performance thing. So although I add stems, like the top row is the intro, and it will stop eventually. It's not the whole song. It's way beyond where I need it to go, but the next bit has to follow, otherwise it will stop, right? And I've got the various song sections I'm moving down through scenes, through the set, top to bottom. I'm not using arrangement view at all. And it's so, does it really matter it's a DAW? I was thinking when I was setting it up, I could move all these sounds out into samples, and into the samplers. I've got the gear that will do it. And the black box is perfect. It's tiny, but I'm not really gaining anything. I could just play it as audio or on the laptop, sampler in Cubase or in Ableton, or it gains nothing. It's just through some sort of purism, and nobody will know.
I mean, they're all instruments, right?
They just know if it sounds good or not. So, I was still doing my thing. There was no cheating going on. So I figured, sod it, doesn't really matter. But I think if he means just to sort of hit play at the beginning of your set and hit stop at the end, yeah, I'm kind of with you there. I don't really see the point in that. Although, if you're playing guitar throughout, what does it matter?
Yeah, I think just to step from that, before David chimes in, just to go back to what Ben was saying, more on his sets. The actual show is 8 channels, but he's pre-formatted all the songs to be on the same drums on 1, bass on 2, etc.
Great minds think alike. Yeah.
And then Hydra Fighter basically asked if he's presetting the tempos, and he says yes. So you can do that in on the scenes. You can set the tempos, and from what you guys are saying, it's very similar to like Ben Burma's setup. Where
I watched his videos. You mentioned him before, and I watched his videos when I was planning it. But he does that thick and twisted thing that you do, where you use a perfectly good analog synth as a MIDI controller and don't use it sound at all.
I tell you what, that MIDI merge is coming. I know it's not called a MIDI merge, but I'm calling it a MIDI merge because I love the alliteration. That's in the post, and I've got the ability to record audio and MIDI for both of my 2 main synthesizers coming through. I'm just itching. I'm just itching to get it done. I love the monologue. I don't know what you're saying. I love it and I use it. It's
so do I. It's a mini-log. Yeah. But
sorry,
to use it, but yeah, you've got a monologue. I mean, I like the fact it's got all that control on it, but I like the sounds it makes as well. But you just use yours as a controller, don't you?
I think if I'm doing live, yes, it's mainly a controller. I think when I'm doing stuff where no one's watching, then that's when I'm picking apart the patches and fucking around with it.
Yeah.
But my live streams, when they're say it again.
It sounds beastly. It's got a fantastic tone.
It does. It's also incredibly gnarly, and my live streams are clunky and gnarly as they are, and I don't need any more at this stage. I cut across Stripe. What were you going to say, man? Sorry.
Oh, I was thinking, I think we'd be naive to think too. I mean, the professionals have all sorts of stuff set up and so I think it does. Again, there's no right way to do it, right? You've got a song you want to get across to someone, right? What's the best way to do it for that song, right? That again pivots right back to that, and it kind of shuts down everything else, right? And people, what somebody wants from, I just think it should always be about bringing that song out to the best of your ability, right? I mean, there's something for the dancing and all the, performers are different, right? People are different on how they, and we understand that, so you just got to do what is your thing to the best of your ability. That's why I was saying, if I went out there, I would probably go a little more visceral, something simpler that I feel like I could wrap my head around and I could hear clearly and really dig into, that would work for me. But that's just what I would do, right? But what somebody else did, what Eon Lake did, it sounded brilliant, and he put in a ton of effort on the front end. And what's wrong with that? I don't see, other than we call it a live show, but that's just what if we call it a performance? Does that change something? I don't, so.
That's you see, especially in the online world, where performances and live sets and stuff are actually pre-recorded, and that's totally fine. Nothing wrong with that. They're great. They're absolutely amazing. They're fantastic to watch. They're entertaining. They're inspiring. They're technically they were recorded 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they're being played back. And it's, I suppose it's kind of what you want to get out of it at the end of the day. It's like, do you want to be inspired, and do you want to hear something beautiful? Do you want to hear someone's creative expression? If at the end of the day all we're doing is expressing ourselves creatively, what does it matter what's happening underneath the hood, so to speak? You know what I mean?
Well, and we go to dance clubs, and well, I don't anymore, but one of the things what I loved about especially early techno when it came in the 90s was the fidelity and the power of it. I mean, it just it hit the clubs, and it was like, what in the world? We didn't see anything, right? It was just music. So you know what I mean? So what's really changed? It doesn't matter, unless you have come to see some kind of wizardry, which people do like, right? But that's what the capes are for. So
yeah. Yeah.
There we go. I want to draw this conversation to a close because we've been going for about an hour and 20 minutes now, which is about the time of the show. Hydrofighter just throwing in his thing for the idea of using a computer. Easy setup and easy teardown to easy in, easy out. Great way of doing it. Unless you've got everything wrapped up in one beautiful flight case, for example.
Which is what I was going to do, but yeah, I didn't in the end. I was off that stage in about 4 minutes, though.
Oh, there you go. There you go. It's always great. And Sunwarper's had an interesting time of it. Love this. When I'm back in the studio, I'll be restructuring the DAWless desk with the new mixer. I'm planning to run that mixer into the SP and then the SP into the DAW. So there we go. It's a glorified tape recorder in that regard, which is awesome.
Yeah, if you want to sample anything, it's all running through it already, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. He says it's a great way to get that analog to digital conversion, and plus you can go back to the DAW when you're doing it. Yeah, wonderful. It's I throw it out to the community. A lot of people have been sharing their workflows and how they do things, and I encourage people listening back on YouTube, or if you're listening to us on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, for example. How are you doing it? What's your workflow? How's your workflow changed? Are you mainly using hardware? Are you mainly using software? How are you doing it? Tell us. We need to know, because that's why we brought this to the table this week. We want to know what's going on with you. We all know how we do things our own way I know how I do it, and now I know how Ian Lake and Acer Stripe do it to a degree. And that's what this is all about. It's an exploration into the community. So let us know either in the comments that I'll put up on the podcast, or come join us in the Discord. Growing community there. We've just set up a contest channel where people are collaborating and taking ideas. Come say hi and tell us more about how you work.
Give me some ideas for my whiteboard.
Yeah, for sure.
Or some of mine for yours.
It's great. Hydrofighter put 2 in the channel over the week. Write a song in a different time signature. So I wrote a song on Monday in 13/8. That was awesome.
Oh my god!
I'm about to live stream.
13.
13/8.
Let's see. Yeah, I have to
How are you breaking that down?
I gotta write it all. 52. What else will be like? 104. I think that's a good one. That's going to take a while.
It runs in interesting. Next week we will be joined by our patron and our label mate, Frequency Control Center, who
nice.
he wants to discuss the idea of inspiration, themes, and concepts, which plays very much into Acer Stripe's what's the phrase that you guys use over there? Ballpark, where you are talking about kind of the backstory for what we do and these little intrinsic ways of inspiration. I made a song in 13/8. Never done that before, and it scared the crap out of me, but I loved it. Come say hi. Let us know how you're doing, because this is all about community. Without me getting sidetracked, I want to come back to it. This is all about us and sharing our ideas and coming together.
That's a good point. Whatever level you're at, or just don't be shy. It's like I said, I delete half of my sketches. I really do. And just because that one didn't work out great, but it's fine. It's not a perfect science. This is
the other things you hear a lot about the right way to do things. Got to do things the right way. And we've talked in the past about understanding what the rules are so that you can occasionally chuck them out the window. Sometimes it's people who don't know the right way and that do things whatever way makes sense to them, that can teach you something new. And sometimes those people end up being incredibly successul. I think Aphex Twin didn't like using standard tunings and got into all that micro tuning stuff, made his own gear. It's just some people just don't accept everything that's spoon fed to them and end up with something different as a result. And we want to hear as much about different workflows as possible.
Yeah, no, it's or they just tell you, I don't know any theory. I don't know what key I was in. Which
how did you do that? I don't know.
I don't know half the time, to be honest with you. I know, I have still my little favorites, but sometimes someone say, oh, that was a nice change chord modulation or something. I'm like, really? I don't know. It sounded good, to me.
Yeah. Just to push back a little bit, again, for the name of There Is No Right Way, Bendu's just popped up. Never delete, just let them age. Different ears in the future might hear something you don't. And I sit with that. I've got loads of old projects which have gone nowhere. I mean, if you think how bad music is anyway, then you put that out one step further to the stems that never made it out into the world. They're a great way to let them age, where you can see the ears, or throw them over to people and see what they can do. Some of the best tracks that have been made are actually, in my experience, the ones that I've collaborated with people, because different set of ears, different ways of going. And again, there is no right way. Maybe I put that on a t-shirt. There is no right way. I'm banging on about t-shirts, but no one seems to care as much as me. We'll have to see.
T-shirt salesman, we know that, right?
That's what we're doing here for. It's all about those t-shirts
as musicians.
Exactly. Gentlemen, any final words before we close today's session?
No, apart from there is no right way, and share with us your approaches. I want to know.
And have fun. Yeah, enjoy yourself. Be kind to your creative process. Don't be too hard on yourself. Just trust your gut and enjoy what you're doing, and it's gonna come. It'll translate to other people. Is my belief.
Clearly agreeing there as well.
Very much so. Ace of Stripe, thank you ever so much for joining us, taking us through your workflow and your story. Look forward to the next time. Hope you had fun on the show. We've had love having you here.
It's wonderful. And my cat didn't meow at all, barely. She's ramping up again. So I had a great time, and it was wonderful talking to both of you. And thank you for all the questions. It's nice to have someone grill me to see what I actually know about my setup.
Very much so. It's great. Guys, everyone in the chat, listening back, we will be back next week. Like I say, our guest host for next week will be Frequency Control Center, where we'll be discussing inspiration, themes, and concepts. A bit more ethereal. We've done a lot of production. It's time to get into the story next week. So it's going to be a great show. Once again, Ace of Stripe, thank you ever so much. Eon Lake, love you. Sunwarper, shout out to you. And everyone in the chat, thank you ever so much. We will see you next week. And I have forgotten to play the video. So that's what we're going to do now. So thank you ever so much. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye.